right. Well, it's about 5:01. You know what, Tom, I think we're just going to go ahead and kick this off. I just wanted to say thank you everybody for joining us tonight for the April 2022 Pinellas Tech Network Meetup, or as we like to call it, PTN. As I was saying before, my name is Evan Brenner. I'm the digital content specialist at Geographic Solutions. One of the cool things I get to do is host this night. We started in 2018 as an in-person knowledge sharing and networking night in Northern Pinellas County, Florida, kind of a way to show that, yes, there is a tech scene in the northern reaches of the Tampa Bay area. Pinellas County, for those of you who don't know, is located in Tampa Bay, which obviously the largest city in Pinellas County, I think, is still St. Pete. When we started the PTN meetup, we strived to provide a place for local tech industry folks to hear from Tampa Bay area leaders and network with each other, and just provide a place for folks from cities like Clearwater Beach, Dunedin, Tarpon Springs. Now that we're virtual, we have a significantly wider reach. So it isn't uncommon for us to have guests from around the world. At some point, though, we might go back to being in person. And when we do that, there's a good chance we'll host it at Geographic Solutions headquarters in Palm Harbor, which, by the way, that is a company that sponsors this night. And we're a company geared towards helping folks on their journey to finding a career, benefits, assistance. So we're almost ready to welcome our guest, but one piece of housekeeping. Please ask any and all questions by using the Q&A button in the top right corner or panel area of GoToWebinar here, this little menu floating thing. At the end of the presentation, we'll discuss all questions asked. And without further ado, I'd like to now introduce Dr. Tom Stablin, a tech leader with 20 years of experience, 20 plus years, and a director of 2 business analytics and information systems programs at the University of South Florida. So, Tom, without further ado, welcome and thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Evan. Can you hear me?
I sure can, yes.
Can you see the presentation?
I can, yeah. And if everybody out there can see the presentation, if you just want to throw a question in the question pane to say that you can see it and that you're hearing well, that would be great.
Yes.
All right. Yep. All right. Donna says all is well. Raul says all good here.
All right. So when Evan reached out, he had mentioned that data quality. We discussed data quality as a topic that could be of interest to a. Sorry, I just popped up and my presentation went away. Not sure why. Evan, any idea why?
Tom, I can see it over here in my screen.
So how do I minimize the, there we go, I'm back.
Okay.
Not sure why this is happening.
That's okay.
All right, we're back at the beginning slide, correct?
Yes.
No, we're not. Now we're back from the, it won't let me, okay, I think we're good now. So we arrived at the topic of data quality, which is relevant, I'm sure, to everyone working in the data analytics space. And if you're here tonight, I'm sure that topic probably piqued your interest. So this photo, I like showing it for many reasons. I'm glad I got to show it tonight because I'm from Pittsburgh and the Penguins are scoring a goal here, right? So my wife actually found this for me. So what's the goal of every organization as it relates to data quality? Well, that's pretty simple. I mean, every organization doesn't have a hard time finding this definition, right? It's high quality, trusted data. And it is required for your organization to be nimble. Any sort of data-driven organization has to have confidence in the data that it leverages, right? So that's what we're gonna look at, high quality data and what exactly it is. So how well do organizations do with this task of defining and managing to high quality data? Well, not very well, according to a lot of surveys. This particular one I grabbed, 1,000+ global executives, and almost 80% of the executives and the lines of business users, they face problems with data quality. I can speak from some experience. I don't know if there are any folks from Citibank on the call. If so, you probably agree with me. My wife was there a few years back, and she worked with a team, sort of a small army, and their entire job existed to reconcile 7 different systems with the same trade data in it. And this is emblematic of large organizations. I was the 2 organizations that I've spent the lion's share of my career at before I came to academia 5 years ago were Constellation Energy, an energy trading company, a lot of trading data, and then DTCC in New Tampa, a financial services company. And both, had material issues, right, with with data quality, and had to form large teams, make large investments in improving data quality. So we know it's a problem. So what exactly is it, right? This is where organizations would start. You're going to ask me to come in and consult and help you. The first thing we need to agree on is what high quality data is. Well, there's a general definitions out there that it's data fit for intended use in operations, decision-making, planning. And this could be at an executive level, all the guidance you get. So if you're a professional looking to, make your career in this data quality space, on the surface, it doesn't look that hard, right? Just provide, we know what operations requires, decision-making and planning. Just need to find what the data they need and supply it. Right? Well, we know it's a lot more complex than that. So how much do companies value this high quality data that they're after? This morning, I went in and I went to LinkedIn and just did a quick search and discovered there are more than 250,000 jobs in the US right now for, that require data quality. So, it speaks to the emphasis that organizations place on these skills and this particular domain, because we certainly can't satisfy the demand for professionals who can manage data quality and do it well. So some more data to support sort of the position that there's a lot of opportunity for improvement. This smaller sample size a couple years back, but it's still reflective today. I believe there are some companies that have formal metrics that explain the financial impact. Right? When it comes down to an organization only has so many funds. And having spent a large portion of my career in portfolio management and how we invest in business ventures versus IT, I can tell you that all comes down to what's the return on these investments going to be. And as you can see, 57% don't measure it at all. And 26%, I bet that those informal metrics, there's not a lot of, there's a lot of convincing going on that's required to buy into those type of metrics. And then some have, very formal metrics. So I'm hoping through, this short time we have to set you on a path, if you're not there already, toward thinking about how you can professionalize your data quality investment and your approach that your organization uses. Because as we can see from these first several slides, there is certainly demand for it. So now we get to how to define high quality, right? We know the organization's high quality data is just simply at a high level supplying all the customers what they need in order to execute their functions. So I put this together today to kind of encapsulate how I view high quality data, and I think this is reflected in the literature. I'm going to share a particular researcher's view on how to classify this data. So the first thing is the data valid? So if, for example, if you have zip codes captured, are they for the right region, right? If there's zip codes that are from the UK, but they're captured in a database that's only designed to capture US, well, they're not going to be valid, right? So just one dimension of what high quality data needs to be valid. Needs to be complete, right? If I need to send a customer bill out, I need to have an address that's complete, and that means zip code at least. Maybe zip code +4 sometime. So we have to define what that is, and we have to make sure that the database satisfies, or the data that we have satisfies our business needs. It's complete. So accuracy, obviously the data needs to be correct. Is the zip code that we have in the system accurate? So another dimension, different from validity and completeness, is it accurate? Is it consistent, right? We have data in a lot of different places in organizations, and do we maintain consistency? So when they store a zip code in one system, do they store it the same way? Do they include the +4 or a phone number? Do they put the area code? Do they include the area, the international code? Do they include the international area code as part of the number? Do they include it separately? So how do we, is this data consistent? Now there's timeliness, right? Does it show up on time? I worked in, again, an energy trading business, and we didn't have real-time reporting. We lost our shirts trading every day. So data needed to be real-time. So a lot of fiber optic cable we bought and ran, and just the investment we had in infrastructure to ensure we had real-time data was critical to our survival. So timeliness is very important. If you're going to, close your books at the end of the month, the end of the quarter, right? Having data available is important, right? If you work in accounting or finance, you're very familiar with the timely deadlines because you're typically there all night long at the end of, at the close time to ensure reports get complete and shareholders get informed. And then availability, right? If I need to have access to it, right? So again, another dimension. So looking at these, I mean, you may be thinking, as I'm thinking, all right, this is doable, right? Seems like it's a complex problem, but it's one that, why they need professionals like me to come in and help them figure out how to get to this high quality by ensuring we have valid, complete, accurate, consistency, timely and available data. However, that's not the complete picture. So some other dimensions or classes is that I'd like to share, or it start with sort of just wrong data, and you can say this accurate and wrong, very similar. So it could be that data is wrong for many reasons, and I think wrong data is something we can. While we argue it's similar to accuracy, may not be exactly the same thing. In organizations, noisy data. Well, is that wrong data? Well, here I just wanted to draw the distinction here in the classes between wrong and noisy. Noisy is, we made some conversions. So, for example, I put in a risk system, and in Texas, and we had an office. We bought a company, and we needed to model a system that was in our Baltimore headquarters office. So the results we generated were varied. There was variability. We were arguing whether it was material or not, but the data we had obviously was noisy, and that caused angst amongst our traders and our leadership. Is it irrelevant? So it can be great data, right? But if I need to assess sales in the East, and I've got just data, sales data from global, maybe I just have national data. Well, it's irrelevant. If I can't dice it the way that I need it to, or it's not for the intended area, it's irrelevant. Inadequate, and again, similar to complete, is it not satisfying my needs? So it could be that data is complete, but it's inadequate. I don't have enough of it to do the type of analysis I want. Again, I'm including these classes because they begin to, the difference between them is they become more subjective, right? Who decides whether it's inadequate? Complete, tell me which attributes you want associated with this data. Inadequate, users tend to define that as they go and discover that I really like more confidence in my model. I need more data. So it's much harder to meet that criteria when it's not established clearly up front. Hard data. Some data is just very difficult to understand. The system that I talked about putting in the risk system, we had to take prices from from our end of day sort of mark to market, and we had to extrapolate and get to what prices would be at points in the future that weren't liquid. So it was very hard to get there, and it's done, the way that it was done by one of the quants was using what's called a cubic spline to curve sort of the data, whereas others just used a linear interpolation. So, but very hard for, somebody in finance that just needs to tie out the numbers to know, to actually appreciate and understand the data. So some things can be hard, some data can be hard to understand. Redundant data. Right? Do we have, how much do we have too much data? Too much of the same kind of data. And then right data. Finally, we get to, it's the right data. It's free from deficiencies. So we can actually do sort of our tie-outs or go live with right data, once we get there. And then finally, rich data, which it's just even at a higher level and allows for insights that we can generate. So the goal on this is actually defined by Mandel. I put a citation at the end in a paper that cited quite a bit. These ones on the outside as classes of data. So to me, now when I look at this problem of how to define high quality data, it's much more complex. And especially now that I bring in these subjective things. Well, who's going to tell me if the data is right or rich? If it's noisy, what level of noise do I have to define and build to, right? To deliver, in other words, if I'm a data quality professional. So this is the problem we are faced with, one of those data quality professionals. And those of you familiar with Monty Python would probably appreciate, it's sort of the search for the Holy Grail. How do we get to the solution of defining high quality data for the organization? And, there were 14 on the previous page. I think there are 16 here. You'll find a lot of different dimensions and how they're defined. You can see a lot of them are the same that we saw on the previous slide. Precision is included here. Objectivity is here. So just some different ones: clarity, believability. So what I would argue, or what I would suggest, recommend, is that it doesn't matter where you start. Somewhere with some objective lists. There's a lot of research in this space. And don't start defining these on your own. So what are the issues that these organizations, specifically what issues do we face? Well, silos, it's a big one. The reason there are 7 different systems that need to be reconciled at Citi for a particular trade day is that they all operate in siloed business units. And they all need to share trade information in order to settle with different counterparties. So, the silos, and this is probably the biggest driver that I saw in my professional career, because it was siloed between business units, siloed between IT units, siloed by products. We had siloed technologies, and it's just silos all over the place. And again, this is, this is enigmatic of a large organization, not necessarily a small one, where everybody shares all the very consistent data, because you're not storing things multiple times in multiple places, right? You can't afford it. So it's as organizations grow, these silos really become an issue, and they cause a form of technical debt. Right now, you got to maintain all these silos, and you end up hiring little armies of folks to do this. Manual errors, it's very rare that you have validation fields for everything, right? Where users can't enter something. So what they usually do is, if it's not jumping out at them as the right answer, they just enter something to get it entered. Or they put in the wrong thing. They type a number wrong. They fat finger something. And there's nothing you can do necessarily to prevent all of these cases from happening. Right? Missing incomplete data. I just didn't have the name of the contact of the customer, and so they didn't call and get it, and they just entered the customer information without finishing, and we didn't put a control in place to not allow that. So OCR, are we a lot of scanning of documents now? So, the technology is not perfect. The same with sort of text and, with unstructured data that we capture, it's, these tools that do these things for us are not perfect. So we end up with errors there and issues. It's ambiguous data. I can't, I sort of understand it, or it's partially, clear to me, but I still don't quite, quite understand how to use the data, or what the data is trying to tell me. Duplicative data, it's very self-explanatory. And then transformation errors, right? We have to, we're using SSI or some sort of transformation, ETL, and there's errors, right? A lot of these things are they're not perfect. We don't have great transformation in a lot of cases. So who defines high quality data? So now we know that it's extremely challenging to define. Well, who's in a position to define it? Well, the answer, and what I found, having delivered many systems, information systems, with, I believe, high quality data, is that, the consumers of it, right? So if it's trade data, I have to go to the traders, right? If it's financial data, I go to the finance. If it's external data, I go to the sources, right? So you have to recognize, we're not going to define it in some back office in a war room, even though we have a lot of smart BAs and data analysts. The consumers need to define this. Consumers this data. So what's the challenge we have? How do we control the perception of our value as data quality professionals? So we have a extremely complex context within which we operate, and now we've got these consumers who all have objective and personal preferences and define things differently. How do we be successful in this space? So the first thing I will offer is that you run it like a business. Right? I am not going to get involved with a project unless I want to have a key, sponsor and stakeholder that I know I can escalate through as high as I need to. So it needs to make sure you have a sponsor at a very high level for any type of investment, and you need to follow some, just like you would a business. You need to develop competency. So do I have the skill sets? Are my data analysts trained? Right? Or do they all understand how to do conceptual data modeling, logical data modeling? Can they talk to the data DBAs who can do our physical data modeling? So do I have competency in this space? And one thing with the competency, I would highly recommend, when I did at Constellation, I didn't do it at DTCC, but Constellation, I built the first VA team, and they were all, they were data analysts as well, and they were all trained to do conceptual logical data modeling, and we built a competency framework. So I had the director of the department hired a new, we didn't have this role, created the role, and the analysts create a matrix where they had domain knowledge and then technical knowledge. So what did they know about our business? Which businesses had they spent time in? Was it the Treasury Department? Was it the trading floor, wholesale? Was it energy? Was it power or gas? Which domain knowledge did we have in that team? And then which technical knowledge did each person have? So we could collectively chart a path for our data analytics team to mature. In a targeted way. So define a framework, choose from, again, I showed you a couple examples of how to define, data, and, just choose a framework, go to Gartner, Google framework, data quality frameworks, find one and again, adapt it. Know your customers. I mean, those consumers of data, right? So you have to be close to them. If you want their perception of you to be positive, they have to trust you. If they trust you, you have a higher probability of them trusting the data that you're defining as high quality data for them. The trust in you goes to leadership as well, right? I mean, leadership has to, when you put metrics in front of them, or any sort of reports that you're going to bless, there needs to be that personal trust as well. So make sure that you know your customers and their expectations. Manage them effectively, right? You have to have a good sense of what's possible by when, and I always subscribe to the under promise and over deliver, especially in the case of when it comes to data quality. Next, collaborate on goals, right? You're know these customers, manage their expectation, and then help them, get them to have skin in the game. Collaborate on the goals. When you set goals for your data quality efforts, they should be signed off by it shouldn't be your brainchild, right? A lot of data quality groups sit in these offices and kind of come up with their plans because they know what the organization needs best, but and it's painful to collaborate sometimes. It's not highest on the priority for people out there, especially commercial folks or even mid office, back office that are stressed with daily deadlines. They want you to fix it, but you need their collaboration. So figure out how to get collaboration on the goals, and then measures. There have to be measures. If you don't have measures of success, it's you're going to be very challenged to convince someone that you made a material difference with all your efforts. And then once you do all those things, you certainly need demand accountability. And that's why you do all the things above this one. Because when push comes to shove, there's still going to be issues. And you're going to have to defend why you can look at your work as a success versus, a failure because you didn't fix everything. So demand accountability, and accountability also not for the scope of what you're doing and agree to at the beginning, but also accountability for maintaining whatever solutions are put in place. So if you put in place processes to ensure that data quality is improved, make sure that the business follows through on their side and implements process effectively. So you have to have visibility into that, and a good way to do that is provide them with metrics, right? This last one is just provide constant and consistent feedback. So one of the reasons we had poor data at Constellation was that trades weren't put in on a timely basis, and when trades weren't put in the day they were executed, we didn't go out and we didn't do what's called hedge the power, right? So if we sold a big contract to sell electricity to some, to say to the University of South Florida where I'm sitting, a lot of electricity, right? If we don't go in and lock in our profit by hedging that the next, that day or the next day, well, who knows? If prices go against us, we could lose our shares. Now, the desk that actually does the hedging needs to see the sales team, who's another business unit, the retail or the commercial industrial business that actually the salesperson that was out here negotiating the contract. They operate another business than the wholesale power hedging group. So if it doesn't go in until maybe the next day, now we got a whole day of exposure without having a position head. So that what I did was just simply put for that went straight to the chief commercial officer who ran our retail business, Mark Houston. I would have a report show up in his mailbox every morning, and in red at the top was an aging report on deals and when they went in the system and when they were actually executed. So that cleared that problem up. Right, so that feedback, I would hope it wouldn't have to come to that, but it came to that, and we were getting blamed for the issues when really it was the process wasn't being executed effectively. There wasn't that accountability from the sales support team. So that's what I mean, and it's an example of that constant, consistent feedback, demanding accountability, having measures of success, which was getting their deals in on time. All right, and manage the details, right? You're going to run this organization. Like if I come in and ask you, what teams are working on or what, the past 6 months have looked like, you should be able to pull up, right? Every issue that you have, the description of it, the status, when it was raised, the target resolution, the importance, the category. You should also tell me who the owner of it is. Is there a technical resource assigned? Is there a testing resource assigned, a BA? And then finally, the final resolution. What was the root cause? The details of that root cause. Are there any ancillary issues? Did it fix everything completely? Do we still have other root causes we need to address? And then complete a date. Now, I just grabbed this collection from this site here at the bottom. But again, running it like a business requires you to track, and this is sort of the nuts and bolts of what it takes to run a data quality organization is details on your issues. So manage these, and I'll say finally, establish a culture of prevention versus cleaning. So at City, what I described, that's a culture of cleaning, right? They have more resources. They can't keep people in these groups, more job openings. They're growing those areas. That's a culture of cleaning versus a culture of prevention. And it's easy to assess, whether you have one or the other. And that's by where's your investment, right? So when you look at who the resources required, the dollars that are spent, they're on cleaning, right? And you should first measure what the investment is in cleaning, and then how much you invested in prevention, and see that shift, right? See that cleaning go away. Your data governance not have to be, millions of dollars, but it is because it's so bad. So it should be just in the culture to prevent data quality issues and thereby improve the quality of your data. So an example, if you're in an organization, pulled this from Gartner as well. I'm not a big, RAG status, red, amber, green, because it's the how are these things defined that I get hung up on. So I never supported them unless they came, how do you define green or yellow? So with that caveat, let me say that this is valuable for you as a leader of a quality organization or somebody charged with improving data quality to come up with metrics. You see, they chose what, maybe a dozen here. They didn't take the 14 or 16, they chose a dozen dimensions that were important to them across the different type data sets they deemed most relevant to track. And there you can see their efforts and what they're doing, where they have low quality data, and completeness is obviously the biggest issue they have, and telephone number, it seems to be most problematic, as in a couple reds there. So again, just something to think about producing if you are charged with improving data quality. So no mention of tools, right? You're probably thinking like, we have all these tools. City, they have a ton of tools. They probably have half of these tools that are listed here. There are data quality solutions, master data management solutions, data integration tools, many others. And I will argue that those tools are irrelevant if you don't have the culture in place, if you don't have if you're not running data quality like a business. And people aren't trained and you don't have the competency, these tools are not going to be implemented effectively, and they're not going to drive financial performance for your company. So I think I'm right at 30 minutes, which is what you had asked for, Evan. And just let me get a little plug here. If this type of conversation interests you, if you're looking to get an advanced degree in a STEM certified master's program, as Evan said, I'm the director of two of those programs, two for working professionals on the left, the Weekend Executive and the Global Online that just launched. And please reach out to me with any questions you might have about that. So I think questions were going to be next. Is that right?
Hey, Dr. Stablein, that was awesome. Thank you for sharing all that information. Yeah, I just want to throw it out there and say to the audience tonight, please go ahead and put a question in the question pane. It's right in the little floating GoToWebinar toolbar, and we will discuss that here right now. So go ahead and add any burning question that you might have about data quality or analytics, and let's discuss. One thing I was thinking of as I listened to this presentation is how would you go about identifying a data silo at your company if you think you have silos?
Well, do you have a team responsible for reconciling data? If you have a person that's job is to receive an Excel file from one group and then an extract from a system and reconcile it to, you have silos, right? That's what I would look for. And let's just trace the dollars in your organization. Functionally, what are people doing? What are their job descriptions? Because and again, sometimes the job descriptions don't tell the tale. My wife's job wasn't data reconciler, right? It was ops. I forget what the official long title was. You would never know that the job was to reconcile 7 systems, and all the people that sit around her on the floor, that's their job too. So I would say that, start with walking around and asking what your folks are doing on a daily basis, and you'll discover, where silos exist. So.
And the other thing too, is that I read a statistic that said that there is a certain percentage of data at organizations that isn't analyzed. How can you start a campaign within an organization to start analyzing that data?
Yeah, so at DTCC, we had a team responsible for trying to commercially, to monetize data that we had that wasn't leveraged. So similar to what you're at, like, what is there value in this data? And we discovered a lot of it wasn't of value. So how do you do? Well, first somebody has to own the data. If you can't find an owner of the data, you need to assess, why are we storing this data? The same thing with reporting. Right, organizations, and I didn't talk about data versus information there. The way academia's gone and literature is they're used interchangeably, right? We know that information is, some value, more valuable than data, and insights are more valuable than information. But so data and information, we know that a lot of reports that are produced, that information is not used. So one of the things, when I went live with a lot of systems, especially when I integrated companies, when I was at Constellation, we bought 10 companies that I had to integrate system-wise. And I was a big fan of just stopping doing things. And so then it led to questions about, well, why do we have all this data stored? And not only that, why are we backing it up 3 times? So in DTCC, we had the same issue. We had 8 copies of gold data, and we started to look at doing reclamation on our databases, because we weren't using them for any value. So yeah, so this is tedious work, but it can be profitable work to go and look at in the corners and discover where why things are being used, how they're being used, and not be afraid to challenge the status quo that we need to have data. So we were producing an example. We were producing data for what's called a 90-day cash flow report. You would think for a big business like Constellation Energy, that's got billions of dollars of revenue every year, it's important that we know 90 days out where our cash flow is going to be, so we know whether we have to draw down credit lines or not. However, the nature of our business was such that they were unpredictable. You had very little confidence, no confidence. Nobody was going to use a 90-day cash flow number. But finance, the CFO, swore that this need was required. So it turns out, when I finally push came to shove, because we were having trouble replicating it and to go live with a new system, I discovered, David Diaz was the person at the time that was working with me on the project in finance. He said, yeah, we actually don't use that anymore. So the 68, but the CFO still believed we used it. So there's data, while it was already exposed, like it was available, it wasn't of value. Probably harder to find data that's not being used and discover value, but that's I don't know, that's helpful or insightful.
That is, and I just wanted to shout out to Christopher. He just said that 90% of data in the average organization is unanalyzed, and sourced out to Forrester Research, and government closer to 99%, which is pretty It's pretty crazy, but that's a good stat to throw out there. And Christopher, if you have a question, let me know, and pop it in the question pane. I can go ahead and unmute you. Raul has a question, and Raul, I can go ahead and unmute you here, and you can go ahead and ask that question if you'd like.
Okay, hi, how you doing?
Hey, Raul.
Uh, yeah, I'll just a thought on like how like the organization I work for is a company called MarketCast, and we're always dealing with like data security issues. So I'm just thinking of like for just in general for best practices regarding just the bulk amount of data in terms of security. What in like in this quick environment where you can access anything at any point. So data security is top of mind for my company in particular.
Yeah, so this is a challenge, especially at large organizations, because there's just so many um, profiles of users that have different privileges to see different types of data, even customer data. You have people that can see certain customer data or certain customers. One way that some organizations try to do is with infrastructure. You end up having a ton of firewalls, like thousands of firewalls sometimes when you try and control for access to data. Whereas if you have if you can clearly define who the folks that need to see this data and leverage this data are, you can purchase infrastructure like a vBlock where you don't have to everyone that has access to the database that's a vBlock, they can see everything, where the rest of the business can't. So that all of their data sits in one secure infrastructure, in a space within a data center. But these problems aren't solved by single users or single teams. These are solved in collaboration with architecture, infrastructure, and obviously TBAs, app dev teams. So again, those are fun things to deal with because they're complicated and there's no necessarily right answer. So I would say if that's a challenge with your organization, to just become more and more educated, right? Keep coming to meetups, asking the right people. I don't work in cyber. I mean, I have colleagues here. We have a cybersecurity program here that is very popular now, and these are, I'm sure, the types of things they're dealing with, they're addressing.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Thanks for attending.
Okay, you know what? And Tom, we're going to go over to Christopher. Christopher, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you here. Christopher has a question to ask. Christopher, I think you're self-muted. If you want to just go ahead and unmute.
Oh, sorry.
There you go.
What technology concepts or movements do you think are going to most help enterprises overcome this challenge of this data underuse challenge?
So I don't see there's a data underuse like as the challenge, right? I see that there are companies taking advantage of the opportunities that big companies have because they're not nimble enough or creative enough to take advantage of the opportunities themselves. So, for example, Citibank, the IT budget. I interviewed the CIO who now owns all of operations. For my doctoral dissertation back in 2017, and they're just so far removed from what's happening day to day, that all you can manage are portfolios of investments that are hundreds of millions of dollars each. I mean, his budget was $2.5 billion back then, I think. So I would say, so you have to rely on lower levels of the organization to discover these type of opportunities. So I would say that, if you're in one of those organizations, you need to make sure that you're pressing, the people and you're incentivizing them to discover sort of commercial opportunities because a lot of small companies pop up. There's a company, FIA Tech, that has access to a lot of data that Citi could have access to, and they end up outsourcing a lot of things to them because It's like running a new line of business for them, even though, it could be profitable and they have access to potentially, all the same data. There's again, no one answer, I guess, to, I don't think there's an approach other than, it's driven from the top. You establish a culture where, if we have it, let's monetize it. Let's figure out how. A lot of times these large organizations, it's just the red tape, getting things approved, investing in, a new line of business, commercial exploration, right? Because if these are exploratory type efforts, to just let some people go and play with some data and just see if there's potential with it. That requires investment, and it has to trickle down from the top. So I would say that would be what I would look to. And if you can make the case at a lower level in an organization for that, then and please do that. I mean, when I was at DTCC, I ended up putting in. I had an issue with the IT portfolio that every month I had to present the CIO and the direct reports, all the MDs, chief architecture officer, chief infrastructure officer, 6 direct reports to the CIO. And I sat in a meeting and I had to present sort of the investment portfolio and all the IT investments and give them, my analysis. And I didn't have confidence that the data I was using was accurate. And so what I did was I went and found data that allowed me to look at an hourly level. We were capturing this. Every developer in our organization had to capture every hour they spent on each project. So if I'm a developer or I'm an infrastructure, I work on 10 projects in a week, I got to say it was 2 hours here, 5 hours there. So I basically audited all that data first, and because it wasn't being used for anything other than to pay people, right? But it was being used to price our products. So if an investment in a certain product to improve it, was X number of hours times the rate, that the product price would be adjusted. And I used that as ammunition to argue that, we need to do a better job capturing this data. Now that's internal value. So what I found was because there were so many errors and people were not doing it accurately, that it was causing prices in our contract because they didn't want the visibility, right? What happened was the IT leaders were controlling the budgets by saying, don't build that project, build this one. And because that's how they were incentivized. Are your projects coming in under budget? So as long as everyone, they manage sort of the total budget of the entire portfolio, there was no issue. So I guess that's data that wasn't used in a certain way that I then ended up leveraging to say, oh no. And the only reason I got, headway with that was because I found that it actually was being used to price our products. Otherwise, they would have just said, it's not that big of a deal, and it's not causing any harm. Because I've been in those situations before. So again, you never know where the value is going to come from. You got to free people up. I have, fortunately, was in a position to be able to invest in doing all the analysis. I mean, it was laborious. It took 6-8 months to get to these reports that finally illustrated what was happening, and then I could use the support with the CIO to say, we need to change our processes. We need to leverage this data in a different way. Here are the reports we need to generate going forward.
So, Dr. Stablein, what do you recommend for somebody who is at a company, organization, what have you, wants to start collecting and analyzing data to organization, but they don't have anything started yet? Like, what's the best way to kind of get started? And I know you covered that with, treating it as a business and stuff like that, but what would you recommend for just kind of putting the things in place to create that team?
So it depends what size the organization is. That really is a big, the advice would depend on what type of organization the person was in. let's say in a medium-sized company, right? So you're not talking about Citibank, you're talking about, smaller, maybe like a ReliaQuest downtown here, some smaller company. I would say, first of all, discover everything you can about what you do now with data quality, like who is there a data governance group? Is anybody governing data quality? And then try and find the owners of data. So you'll know pretty quickly when you go to IT and you say, well, hey, give me access to this data, who the owners are. Because they're going to fire off an email. Somebody on the business, they're going to say, hey, Susie, Tom wants access to your data. Do you care? And I'll ask simply for, assuming you have some skill or competency, you can write, SQL queries, and you can begin to explore data. I'll ask for just my boss. I'll get my boss convinced to say, look at this data might be profitable. I just want to stand up a replica. At the end of the day, end of the week, just give me a snapshot of it. So I don't even impact your operation. I don't need to risk bringing down your database. So there should be no, you think the company, yeah, hey, somebody's going to try and add some value. You would be shocked at how many organizations resist that. Right? People, no, what are they going to look at my data for? And then their initial response, well, I don't need you producing anything that I have to reconcile to. And so I would say first find out who the owners of data are, and hopefully you find someone that's willing to let you go, and take a look at their data. That would be my guidance on where to start. And then you can assess how well it's covered. You can look at all those dimensions and make an assessment. And but you have to have some basic skill or competency to be able to do this.
Thank you. And then also, do you have a favorite tool, platform, or recommendation for a tool or platform that you have used to analyze data, or something along those lines?
No, it depends what type of data analysis you want to do. The actual analysis is not, it's not the hard part, right? Anybody that deals with data will tell you we spend 90% of our time cleaning data, right? The magic happens, right? That's like the 5%, the 1% of the time where we run models and do some, it's the cleaning data. And in cleaning data, there's a career people can make on just the process. Right? How do you control for the process, the flow of data within your organization? Do you have architectural maps that people can point to explain where data flows and how accurate the flow is between different systems, how complete it is, where issues exist? There's so much of that work, design work, that's design of the current state, meaning producing models for current state that people just don't take the time to do. And one of the course that I teach in our executive program is systems analysis design, and that's the one thing that I have them do, right? Model a current information, instantiation of a current information system. And I've had students from that exercise end up leading projects at their company because no one's ever done that. And now the leadership goes, that's how it all works. Like, are there opportunities to improve it? Can you do it for the rest of the business? Because it's, you have somebody that actually can speak from fact. You gain that trust. We talked about, you have high quality data, you have trust in it. Well, you have trust in the person first. And that's how you can get some of that trust. Do the tough work that those before you haven't done, to reflect how your current information system operates and how data flows.
Thank you. And do you have a favorite framework or data model?
No, actually, for this one, because there are so many, I just went and I looked at Gartner. I looked at some research papers. You're going to read papers, and it may be the first paper you read, but I recommend. This is one area where IT literature, from academia is going to be valuable. And I say that because sometimes academia is trails, right? It takes us sometimes 2 years to get articles published in journals. It takes a long time, so it can be stale, especially in the case of technology. But in this space, we've pretty much defined there's not that, that much more to discover when it comes to frameworks. So I would say, get access, through the university. I have access to all this information. So figure out how to get access to your local library, come to the university, your local university, and search what's called Google Scholar for data quality frameworks, which is what I did. And you're going to see their papers written. If you can find a systematic review, they're called. Basically, that is, and it's fairly current. Basically, every so often, someone will say, "Let me look at all the research on data quality frameworks there have been," and then I publish a systematic review. I've reviewed it all, so you don't need to go back and look before 2019. I've just published a systematic review. Those are the most valuable for business people to look at because it encapsulates all the other research to that point. So that's what I would say to, because it's all those things that I said about managing it like a business, like those framework. Yeah, you need a framework. Pick one. There's vanilla chocolate. To me, it's just what's your preference. That's not the value in making getting the best framework.
Thank you. And we have just a couple minutes here, so if to the audience, if you have any questions, please pop them in the question window. Tom, what do you see for the future of data analytics, maybe 5-10 years down the road?
Well, no crystal ball here. I'm a sort of a heads down researcher, like current issues still with technical debt and unwinding all the debt that we have in our organizations. But data just continues to explode. So at some point, it's analysis paralysis. Like you can't possibly analyze the amount of data that we're collecting. So I see that there's going to be a market for very targeted, I wouldn't say necessarily modeling, but very targeted solutioning, right? So people aren't going to invest in just exploratory of every type of data. Like you're going to have an idea that gets vetted, pretty thoroughly. From a quality perspective, I think there's just going to be some new challenges with some certain spaces. So for example, we have all these electric vehicles now. There's going to be tons of data around that being collected from these things, right? I forget 250 data points, I think, on this edge that, of all the different touch points on a car that are collecting data. I mean, there's going to be, healthcare. Eventually, hopefully, we share these medical records. And if I get a broken arm, 25 years ago and on a trip, in France, that when I'm, the same arm gets hurt and I'm in California 20 years later, they have that history. I think the will be there eventually, and that's going to open up, opportunities. But again, the quality of that data, it's still going to be the issue, right? How do you, this problem is not going to go away. So, and I don't know what the future, 20 years holds with this, but I know that the problem of data quality is still going to be there. I just think there's going to be new markets and there's going to be very selective investment because companies, when things are good, let's go spend money doing this, that, and the other. I think that whole looking in the corners for some sort of value that you think is there, like that investment starts to get limited, right? We hit a recession, all of a sudden companies can't just sponsor teams to go do data analysis, and so I'd be careful, kind of carving a career path which is, that's your expertise, right? I go find value in data that you didn't know you had, versus I help you clean data and improve the quality of your data and leverage it for more profitable investment for your company. And that's off the top of my head, so.
Well, I like that a lot. Well, thank you. I appreciate you going off the top. I think that was really good. And we are just right up at about 6 p.m. here, so I think we're just going to go ahead and we will sign off for today. But Dr. Stablein, thank you so much for spending some time with us. I am indebted and I'm very grateful. My name is Evan Brenner. I'm the digital content specialist at Geographic Solutions. Should you want to check us out, geographicsolutions.com, and you can find the Pinellas Tech Network by just doing a Google search or a Bing search. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Eventbrite, we're on Meetup.com, and look out for the next Pinellas Tech Network. Perhaps it could be in person, you never know, or it could be virtual. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a great evening. Dr. Stablein, thank you, and I shall talk to you soon.
All right, thanks, Evan. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.